I came to this country in the aftermath of civil war in Bangladesh. I was 6, nearly 7, and I didn't speak a word of English. I literally came from a village in Bangladesh, and my family came to live in the outskirts of East London. I realised how important it was that people knew their rights and were able to advocate on their own behalf, because there was an awful lot of discrimination that was experienced and disadvantage arising out of people, for example, not having financial resources, not having the ability to perhaps speak English, and to be able to really fight for their rights. And so inevitably, as a lot of immigrant children were, I was drawn into all of this. And I think all of that experience then led me to think about my career. And I felt I was quite good at public speaking at school, and it seemed to me that I'd studied the right subjects and had done well academically, and thought that a career actually in the law, and particularly as a barrister, would be one that I could actually entertain. And my parents did face challenges in allowing me to go to university. The community that I come from is actually quite conservative, and at the time the expectation was that the boys would go and work as waiters in Indian restaurants, and the girls would be married off and keep a home and have children. There was never really any possibility that I would be allowed to go away to university, because that would mean going away from home and not having the parental oversight that members of the community thought would be required. And so even though my school had considered that I perhaps should consider applying for Oxbridge, that wasn't an option, because I would have to have remained home. And part of that then was that I got married very young, and I was engaged straight after my A-levels and married at the end of my first year at university. And that enabled me to go to university without facing criticism. And I was expected to perform all the duties of an Asian Muslim wife within the extended family whilst undertaking my studies as well. A typical day for me would have been ensuring that everybody had their breakfast, going to my classes, returning home, making sure that I did the cooking and the cleaning for the family before settling down to get on with my studies and writing essays, etc. That was a way of life that was common for women of my background. It has its advantages as well, because you have the support of an extended family network. And for example, when I came to have children, I had ready-made childcare that I didn't have to pay for. And so it's perhaps difficult for people sometimes to understand, and it's very easy to see it all through a very negative, sort of victim-led lens. But in fact, I come from a community that has collectivistic values rather than individualistic values. And there are pros and cons in relation to each, I think. We were a real mixed bag of practitioners of different levels of call, very diverse. We had plenty of white male middle class practitioners. We also had BAME practitioners, a good mix of men and women. It was a very diverse set of chambers. and we were determined to do things a little bit differently, and we saw ourselves as a community resource as well. And so we undertook a lot of voluntary work within the local community. Right from my teenage years, I was involved with voluntary sector organisations and charities that existed to improve conditions for women and children in particular. And so I had hands-on experience of handling cases and advising people, both in a voluntary capacity and in a paid capacity. I was also chair of Ashiana, which is the only dedicated forced marriage refuge in the country. And through that work, I obviously developed an expertise. And when it came to consideration of legislation, I was obviously part and parcel of campaigning groups run by women to try and address changes to the law in areas such as forced marriage, FGM, domestic violence. And so that meant that policymakers and government sought my advice, and I was asked to advise and also to assist in the drafting of legislation. I think the Forced Marriage Civil Protection Act of 2007 has had a tremendous impact on the law and the practice of law, and most importantly on the lives of usually women, but also sometimes men and children. It has been a huge success. When I entered the profession, I had absolutely no thought whatsoever about becoming a judge. I really didn't think it was something that was open to me, and I didn't think someone like me could achieve a position like that. And it happened incrementally that I came to a position where I thought I'm going to apply. And really it started with recognition of my skills by judges who approached me and said that I should think about becoming a judge. And so I made the application. It was by open competition through the Judicial Appointments Commission. I applied to be a recorder, and it was a very challenging, exacting process. There were a number of assessments and tests that I had to undergo, and I was successful. And yes, it was really pleasing to be able to have achieved that. And for me, I think it was really important for the community that I come from, that actually someone from their community had succeeded in a profession that was viewed as being very establishment. I think it is essential that we have judges who are women in leadership roles as well as BME judges, because that makes a difference in terms of career progression. And I think it definitely encourages a lot of young people from BME backgrounds, particularly women, to consider a career in the law where otherwise they might have been deterred from doing that. And I think women's involvement in the law has resulted actually in concrete changes in the law. It was women's campaign groups working alongside usually female barristers and solicitors who brought about changes, for example, to the defence of provocation in murder. It was a woman president of the family division that in a judgment recognised the importance of domestic violence as a harmful practice impacting upon the well-being of usually women and children. And I think all of those changes has been for the advancement of society as a whole.